He exposed the incompetence and reckless decisions of the Secretary of Defense. $1 billion wasted, military resources diverted, and American troops used for domestic policing, all at the expense of our national security. The truth is about to come crashing down. You won't believe what happens next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In response to my colleague from Oklahoma, I believe the Secretary of Defense has just responded last week and admitted that the $1 billion mission that he led against the Houthis, who do not have a navy, has not restored the transit of U.S. flag commercial vessels through the Red Sea, and in fact has resulted in the loss of 2 F-18 Hornets to the tune of $60 million apiece, as well as, I believe the last count was 7 Reaper drones to the tune of another $200 million. You are blowing through money like my fellow cadets and I did in our first Liberty after basic camp. Luckily, I didn't end up with a questionable tattoo. Your failures, Mr. Secretary, since you've taken office, has been staggering. You sent classified operational information over Signal to chest thump in front of your wife, who, by the way, has no security clearance, risking service member lives in the process. You blew the $1 billion fight against the Houthis, whom, again, as my colleague says, has no navy, and yet you lost all of those aircraft. You've created such a hostile command environment that no one wants to serve as your chief of staff or work with you in other senior DoD leadership roles. But what we should all be talking about, more than all of this, is that you have an unjustified, un-American misuse of the military in American cities, pulling resources and attention away from core missions to the detriment of the country, the warfighters, and yes, the war fighting that you claim to love. I don't know if this is because you are too inexperienced and incompetent to understand the real threats facing our country, or if it's because you are just an unqualified yes man who can't tell the president how to keep Americans safe. You are focusing on renaming basis for Confederate generals. You said just now to Senator King that to a man and to a woman, we would rather be associated with the old Confederate names. Well, I am one of those women. I served at Fort Rucker, Alabama, a base that was named for a traitor who took arms against the United States of America, led troops who killed Americans. It was renamed for Mike Novosel, a Medal of Honor recipient, who in his citation for the Medal of Honor includes that he saved 29 American lives, to include hovering backwards in a helicopter towards an enemy bunker where a wounded American was laying and saved that person, including after being taken fire himself. I know a little something about what it takes to fly a helicopter when you've been hit by enemy fire. That was heroic. I'd rather be associated with Mike Novosel than a failed Confederate traitor. I don't know whether you are inexperienced or too incompetent, but I wonder when you will actually focus on our nation's warfighting mission. We know that California is just a deliberate, systematic, political and dangerous campaign led by you. We should not be using our military to play cops against Americans. General Kane, as chairman, a key part of your job is to coordinate military planning across the joint force. Is the department currently incorporating into any military plans expanding the use of the reserve forces to include the National Guard or active duty troops to support domestic law enforcement, including in other locations in the United States?
Senator, we careful.
No, General.
Well, it's not really a yes or no question, Madam Senator. We plan all kinds of different things.
I think it is a yes or no question.
I'm not aware of anything, but the reason why I'm answering is the tags may be looking at something that I'm not aware of.
What are you doing at your level? You're not aware of that happening at your level? Because we know that on his first day, President Trump directed U.S. Northern Command to revise its unified command plan to add new planning requirements to combat, and I quote, criminal activities. A series of follow-up executive orders continue to redirect DOD priorities to supporting domestic law enforcement, including one in April that tells DOD, and I quote, use national security assets for law and order. In other words, do law enforcement's job. I'd like to enter these executive orders into the record, Mr. Chairman.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered.
Hegseth, you say you are focused on warfighting and warriors. These are your words. Yet you are diverting untold DOD resources and attention to a fundamentally non-military mission of domestic policing. Across the country, we have qualified police officers who are trained for that mission. They know those streets better than the Marines you deploy to Los Angeles, who normally focus on the Indo-Pacific. And you recently approved 700 more troops in 3 other states to do admin and logistics works for ICE. You say all of this is valuable training, but I would much rather have our troops do tough, realistic training relevant to high-end combat. Instead of typing in spreadsheets for ICE, they should be conducting live fire maneuver exercises. Instead of patrolling American neighborhoods and standing in front of federal buildings, they should be rehearsing call for fire missions. We have local police who can stand in front of those federal buildings. And the list of distractions goes on. You are encouraging the DoD workforce to go work for DHS in increasing numbers. You're pulling the military away from facing foreign enemies who literally say things like death to America. And you're putting troops with weapons aimed at Americans. Mr. Secretary, let the military get back to its real job. Stop forcing them to do DHSs. And if you want to be DHS Secretary, maybe you can apply for that job when you're fired from this one due to your...
What you just witnessed was a devastating takedown of Secretary of Defense by Senator Dugworth, who relentlessly exposed failure after failure under his leadership. From the disastrous $1 billion mission against the Houthis, to reckless personal behavior, and now the misuse of military resources for domestic law enforcement. This isn't just mismanagement. It's a systematic failure that puts every single American at risk. Let's break it down. The most staggering revelation here is the $1 billion mission against the Houthis, a mission that was supposed to safeguard vital international shipping lanes. The Secretary of Defense's failure to restore the transit of U.S. flag commercial vessels in the Red Sea while losing 2 F-18 Hornets and 7 Reaper drones is not only an operational failure, it's an incompetence of the highest order. That's $200 million in aircraft lost, $200 million in drones lost. And for what? A mission that never achieved its stated goal. How does that happen under someone's watch who is supposed to be safeguarding national security? But the failures don't stop there. Senator Dugworth exposed how the Secretary of Defense has turned a blind eye to alarming personal conduct, including the irresponsible and dangerous use of classified information, with reports of him sending sensitive military details via unsecure channels and putting service members' lives at risk. What makes this even more shocking is that the Secretary's own wife, without security clearance, had access to this critical information. Is this the kind of leadership we want overseeing the Pentagon? A person so reckless that they compromise national security for personal vanity? Then we're told about the toxic leadership environment created under his watch. According to Senator Dugworth, this has resulted in the failure to retain qualified staff, leaving critical positions unfilled, including the chief of staff role, because no one wants to work with him. This kind of dysfunction isn't just damaging, it's downright dangerous. The Department of Defense is supposed to be one of the most disciplined and professional institutions in the world, but instead we're seeing a leadership vacuum filled with incompetence and mismanagement. The military needs strong, decisive leadership, but this Secretary of Defense has failed to provide any of that. The true scandal, however, lies in how this administration has used the military for purposes it was never meant to serve. Senator Dugworth brought up how military resources are being diverted to domestic law enforcement, including patrolling U.S. cities and assisting ICE, tasks for which the military is not trained. The Department of Defense should be focused on high-end combat training to confront real threats, like those from foreign adversaries who openly declare death to America. Instead, American troops are patrolling our streets, being used to enforce domestic policies, which undermines both the integrity of our military and the trust the American people have in their government. Let's stop for a moment and ask ourselves, is this the right use of our military? The National Guard and local law enforcement are trained to handle domestic issues, not military personnel who should be preparing to confront actual military threats abroad. If this Secretary of Defense wants to be a part of the Department of Homeland Security, he should apply for that job because he's absolutely failing in his current role. We need a Secretary of Defense who understands the primary mission, to protect and defend the nation against external threats, not use our military as a tool for political theater or domestic enforcement. This all points to a larger issue of leadership accountability. The Secretary of Defense is supposed to be a steward of our nation's military resources, leading our warfighters with integrity and focus. But instead, he's wasting taxpayer dollars, jeopardizing national security, and failing to take responsibility for his actions. Why is he still in this position? Why is the American public allowing these reckless decisions to continue unchecked? The most troubling part of all of this is the lack of accountability at the highest levels of government. The power structure, from the White House to the Department of Defense, seems to be protecting its own interests, even as American lives and American security are put in jeopardy. What does that say about our priorities as a nation? How can we trust a system that continually shields those in power from responsibility? This is not just a failure of one person, it's a failure of the system itself. The American people deserve better than this. We deserve leaders who will take responsibility for their actions, who will put the needs of the country first, and who will focus on protecting the nation from external threats, not creating unnecessary distractions. This This Secretary of Defense is not fit for the role. He has proven time and time again that he lacks the competence, the leadership, and the integrity needed to run the Department of Defense effectively. So, what's the solution? We must demand accountability. We cannot allow reckless behavior and incompetence to continue at the highest levels of government. The military needs strong, decisive leadership, the kind that focuses on the nation's security, not political theater. We need to act now to ensure that our military is focused on what matters, protecting our nation from real threats, not being used as pawns in political games. It's time to hold the Secretary of Defense accountable for his actions. Share this video to make sure the truth is heard, subscribe for more updates, and stay loud, because this is not over. The American people deserve better leadership, and it's time we demand it. No one is above the Constitution, and we will not stand by while our military is misused.